I'm Jeremy Till, and this is Amplify. Brian MacKenzie. I had the pleasure of meeting Brian back in 2007 when he launched CrossFit Endurance. This guy has always been at the cutting edge of what's next, and now he's at it again. He's started XTP with some world-class people like Laird Hamilton, Gabby Reece. He's working with Wim Hof, some amazing people in the space that are changing the face of really brain technology and performance. So guys, get ready to rock and roll. Brian is going to be on point telling you what's going on in health and wellness and the future. Well, we're here in Austin, Texas with Brian MacKenzie, and we're super excited for this podcast. Brian is just an innovator in the space of health and wellness, fitness, and really carving new paths. And when I look at fitness as a whole, I always look for the new adapters of, what's next. And Brian is definitely one of those individuals. So I always stay attuned to what he's doing, and what he's doing right now I think is a huge shift in a pivot in the space of health and wellness. So I'm super excited to have him on. Brian, what's happening, brother?
Hey, what's happening, Jeremy? Thanks for having me, buddy.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. So kind of where we're going to get started out is just give us a little bit of a snapshot of who you are.
Yeah. Well, one, I appreciate the kind words. I think for the most part, there's like, of the one or two things that maybe I've been an innovator, or three things I've been an innovator on, there's maybe 15 to 20 things that didn't become an innovation. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I got where I'm at through a lot of trial and tribulation. I made a lot of mistakes. I was an athlete most of my life. That probably saved my life. I got into drugs when I was young, and that became an alternative to the sports. It was a lot of drinking and drugging while I was doing the sports. Think frat house mentality, right?
Yeah.
And that was basically my life. Like, we were rock stars, but athletes through high school and then a little into college, and then I decided that I needed to make a shift, and so I kind of cleaned up and got my act together at about just before I turned 24, and decided that I was gonna just start to apply just basic principles of, I'm gonna go to work. I'm gonna get a job, and I'm gonna hold a job, regardless of what that job was, And I washed cars. I did everything. My first job was actually when I was a teenager. It was like I worked at a jet ski place, because I actually almost got into jet ski racing, except my mom put the kibosh on that. Yeah. So I worked at Performance Jet Ski, which was the biggest jet ski performance place in the world at the time.
Where were you though?
I was in Southern California. Okay. I grew up in Southern California, been there my whole life, and all this stuff started occurring, and I laid that foundation. I started figuring out, oh wow, if you actually keep a job, you actually make some money, you can save some money, you can get, you can pay for things, you can do, be responsible for yourself. All these things started occurring, right? In that midst, I had been on the 9-year plan for school. So I was just like trying to figure out from a college perspective what I was actually going to do, but couldn't figure that out. Like, school did not do that for me. I hated school. Like, I did not like that environment for learning. That didn't mean that it doesn't work for a lot of people. Like my wife, it works incredibly well for her. She loves that structure, that way of doing things. But for me, it was different. And then as I was going through this process, I took an exercise science class. I started to fall in love with all of that world. And I was introduced to a guy by the name of Nicholas Romanoff, who changed my perspective and way of, it started to evolve the way I was starting to think, right? And it immediately did it from the get-go of me trying to understand the exercise science or even movement world, right? And that just catapulted everything at that point. And that was like 2000, early 2000s. And, that shift right then changed the trajectory of everything. But the fact is there were so many mistakes made along the way, and I mean, it's a long backlog story.
But just to get on one of those shifts, what was there a particular thing that happened that made you say, like, the drugs, the alcohol, it's time to transit, like that pivot?
Yeah.
What was that?
Well, one, my parents had made a decision. I have a very tight relationship. I actually live directly across the street from my parents right now.
Nice.
Which is odd to think in Southern California. At least.
Yeah.
You know, you get more towards the south, it's kind of more normal.
Yeah.
Maybe not Austin, but
Yeah.
but you know what I'm saying? And both my parents had made a collective decision that they no longer could let me come over or be a part of the family anymore, because they were just, my mom was just, it was so hard for her to watch me do what I was doing, and she just didn't think I was going to make it. I had already been in jail a few times. I gotten a couple DUIs. I was off of my rocker. I was doing stupid shit. I wasn't necessarily hurting anybody, but I could eventually hurt somebody. And then it was a bunch of friends that decided that they were like, yeah, you're past what we call fun anymore. And so it became a reality to me. Like, I had nothing. I was sleeping on couches. I had no car. I had nothing. I wasn't doing anything. I was a liar. I was a cheat. I was a thief. I was like, I wasn't necessarily stealing a lot of shit, but I was definitely not in a good place.
Right.
And
Gotcha.
I decided that was that was low enough for me at the time. Mm-hmm. And so at 23 and some change, I was like, fuck this, I'm out. And I was like, I sobered up, I stopped drinking, and I think that was probably the most pivotal thing that happened in my life at that time. That led to a series of a number of other things. But that stopping drinking alone, I don't mean just getting sober, I mean stopping drinking and being able to step back and look at yourself realistically and say, what do you want to do? Mm-hmm. And I still have friends today that I was partying with or even involved with that are still doing the same thing. And it just breaks my heart, to a large degree, because there's just this illusion centered around this whole party culture of socialization. And, regardless, I'm not saying what's right or wrong here, but I do know that I have absolutely no desire to be living that thing in any way, shape, or form. And the irony of that is that every single human being that I'm attached to in any way, shape, or form is on that level as well. Like, they either don't drink, and it is not by like, oh, we met in AA or anything. So
right.
I literally haven't been to an AA meeting in quite like probably a decade or more. But it's and there's nothing wrong with that either. But I literally, like, Laird Hamilton does not drink. Cody does not drink. It is what it is. It's just like, my wife does not drink. She's not an alcoholic. These aren't necessarily alcoholics, but they're just people who just decided that partying wasn't a part of the process. And I don't think that's necessarily something that defines, a glass of wine or a beer.
Right.
That's not what I'm talking
totally
about.
Understand, yeah.
So at any rate, I think that became a catalyst in a big, big shift. That opened my eyes to a spiritual path. Not necessarily everybody's path, but it opened my eyes to understanding a spiritual path, and I got immersed in a lot of this stuff at a very young age, and can continue to shift and take that to what it was I was doing, and that also molded the way I started thinking as a professional. But the irony, the other ironic part here, is that I've never really changed the character of who I was, where it was like, I'm not doing it the way everybody else is going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it the way I want to do it.
Right.
I'm going to be creative in my own way. Whether it was like, fuck the man, or, like, I'm not going to be a part of the system, or this or that. There was always this thing. Like, I grew up skateboarding, and I still skateboard. Like, I may not be on, at the X Games right now, which, is a far cry, but, like, from my level of skateboarding. But the fact is I grew up on that mentality. I grew up in that world, and that world still is a part of me. It's like, it just is what it is, and that's kind of evolved through everything I've done.
Yeah. So in that kind of entering into that window of CFB endurance and like the beginning back in 2007 to 2016, that journey, kind of give us a little snapshot of like that journey and kind of where it's brought you to today.
I had played around, I had messed around with a lot of the endurance stuff for quite some time, and about 4 years, I had been traditional program stuff. I wasn't necessarily following a specific program, but I was following traditional method, and there wasn't anything wrong with it. But I did feel a little overworked. I did feel a little beaten up. I did feel like I was weaker. I did feel, there was just things I had correlated, back from my career as an athlete to where I wasn't hitting marks I think I should have hit. And so that's what kind of that had me searching for a lot of different things. Romanoff had always had me thinking differently, and I was thinking differently about strength and conditioning towards endurance athletes, a lot of this stuff. And we had played with a lot of different things, and he had reduced some mileage on some of my training and made me think very clearly about what quality versus quantity was, and it through action, not necessarily through a conversation, because and that was pretty interesting to me, and that kind of formulated a lot of the way I think now. Is that and it's been the path for a lot of things that I've done, where it's we can talk all we want, but until we're actually acting upon something, we don't understand it, and so I started acting upon these things and started getting very fast. I mean, a lot faster than I was, and I was able to conquer longer distances, and that was my inevitable step into CrossFit as I was looking for better conditioning or different conditioning stuff, and found CrossFit, started formulating the model of CFE roughly around 2005, late 2005. Had something pretty spot on by the end of 2006, and started really incorporating all that stuff throughout 2007, and had something pretty interesting by the time we had brought it into the CrossFit market, where Greg was like, hey, can you present this information? And so that's what we started doing, and that allowed us to that gave us a platform, a massive platform, and people were coming in droves to CrossFit at that point, and people were so open-minded and just like, oh yeah, yes, you mean I don't have to go and run forever and ever and ever to go run a marathon? And it was, I think that was the big thing back then, it was right. Just like, and it's like, well, no, you don't, but inevitably you can work up to doing longer distances as you can handle that and your body can handle it, whatever. But we had evolved that and continued to evolve it, and went through the whole CrossFit endurance deal. Wrote a couple books through that time. We were running seminars with CrossFit for 9 years, just under 10 years, and it was time to split. Mutual decision. I'm grateful for the entire thing. Absolutely. Grateful to Greg, Dave, everybody. They were a pivotal platform for me to do something that I had been kind of an innovator on, and we did that very well, and we appreciate it. So
no doubt.
Yeah,
no doubt. Now it gets real exciting because it kind of brings us to present day.
Yeah.
I mean, all the works that you got going, and I mean the amazing thing right now, Brian, with what I see with what you're currently doing is the world-class people that are associated with, I mean, the brain, like collective brain that's working within the confines of XBT, and it's just world class. So tell us about what's orchestrated today.
Well, it's interesting because if you just keep plugging away and you keep being, I think the mainstay here is understanding your own creativity. I've been able to speak at a lot of different places and work with a lot of different people, and I get to do it today, which is always just an absolute, like, this is the funnest stuff for me. You keep creating and you keep chipping away, and all of a sudden you start finding similarities with other people, and that's where things start to come together. And that was where kind of my relationship with Laird Hamilton began, was 3 years ago. In here's a guy who's had an intimate relationship with nature because of his profession, and he's done it entirely different. He was the first guy to really do it differently than a lot of people. He didn't go on tour. He didn't want to be a contest surfer. Didn't want to be involved in letting some judge be the decider in what he gets to make. He was going to be that. He was going to do that, and he was, he wanted to surf waves. He didn't want to sit in a lineup. He didn't want to, so here's a guy who basically invented stand-up paddling, who invented toe-in surfing, part of that crew, and literally is now, the curator of, hydrofoiling. And, it's like you've got this, he's just got this thing that this driver. And, we met, and it was not only my relationship, but the way that I look at the world from more of a natural point of view, and using movement based off of what nature is kind of supplying and trying to think of it in that terms. And that was where our connection met. And there were plenty of people that I've been involved with prior to Laird, but I think that, moving into the XPT model, this was how XPT started. And over the course of 2.5 years, 2.5 years, we continued to think and cultivate ideas and get those out. And, I got to work with a ton of people who have helped plant seeds on other parts of that now we're really starting to be able to connect a lot of the things we've done.
Yeah.
Whether it's from the CrossFit Endurance, CrossFit, even yoga, you're taught, but the breathing stuff that we ran into, it was Laird who actually introduced me to the ice, stuffed me in his ice tank, and I lasted about 15 seconds the first time we did it because I had no idea how long we were supposed to go until he actually stuffed me in the ice. And I was like, how long am I supposed to be in here? And he's like, 3 minutes. And I'm like, are you out of your mind? And I popped out because I couldn't wrap my head around. I just didn't put that, it wasn't there. And by the end of the day, I think I got 3 minutes that day. But after really wrapping my head and watching other people do it and observe it and just like the whole thing. So he gave me a book that day called Becoming the Iceman. And this was a book written on Wim Hof.
Right.
And I read the book like in a day and a half. I went on the internet, Googled Wim Hof. Boom, there's this guy and he's got this course. And so spent my money on the course. I've always been somebody who's wanted to learn more and more and more. And so it's just however I can get my hands on something new. And I was so enamored with this that I was just willing to spend the money. And so I did it. And it's not that it was a lot of money, but it was just, I'm still trying to educate myself. And I start the program and I'm 1 week in and I'm like, holy crap.
Mm-hmm. And in what year is this?
This is 3 years ago.
3 years.
Yeah, it's 3 years ago, roughly.
Mm.
And so about 2.5 at this point, because it was summer, because he was in Kauai when I really stumbled onto the Wim Hof stuff. And I immediately called up Laird and I said, I'm sending you this program. You got to sign up. You got to do this program. And he signed up immediately. Every day after that, we were literally texting each other. And then I flew over to Kauai, and I ended up going over there a couple times that year to work with Laird because I started working with him around he's had a pretty degenerative hip issue. The dude has just demolished his body over the years. Broken his feet and ankles like 7 times. It's pretty gnarly, and so he's had a pretty bad hip, which he just had replaced. But I came in to a large degree to help him try and maneuver around that, to think of different ways, because if you're standing on a hydrofoil or a surfboard foil for 6 hours a day, that can tend to do some things that we weren't really designed to stand there for 6 hours a day. But when you're having fun surfing mega waves, it's a different story. So at any rate, I was helping him kind of work around ideas like that and training around that and things, and he became very open to a lot of this stuff. And so we just started really going back and forth with the Wim Hof stuff and training stuff, and we started implementing it prior to going out on the toe-in stuff. And so he figured out that, if he were doing the breathing prior to going out on the hydrofoil, and then actually when we were on the jet skis heading out to the surf, like if we were doing the breathing, we were just basically locking him into a place to where he was just centered and ready to go.
Yeah. And
that became basically the amalgamation of what it is we did with XPT. And then he and Gabby approached me. Gabby's been a part of this whole thing from the get-go as well. She's been the organizer of everything. Like, this woman is just like, playing chess the whole time. And it's amazing, so we ended up creating this thing, and it was they asked me about just about a little less than a year ago, hey, we'd like to create something with you. We've been wanting to get inside this world for some time, and we don't feel we've done it right. And we feel that if we were to create a relationship with you from a business standpoint, that we could potentially make something really great based on all of our philosophies and the way we've done things. And that was how XPT basically started coming together.
Yeah.
But it was more or less the lifestyle of like the things that we were doing.
Right.
That we were like, why aren't we sharing this with people? Why is it we're sharing just a workout with them? Why is it we're just sharing, that why aren't we sharing everything we're doing with people versus, hey, you're confining ourselves to a gym or just to the water, or, there's so much more than that. So.
Yeah. So just to give people, the listeners, an idea of XPT, tell me like what really defines it, or the protocols of what y'all are actually doing.
Yeah. So what defining XPT is, more or less, it's really a lifestyle program. But it's based around understanding how we take care of our bodies, how the body needs to be. That this isn't just a half a day thing, or a piece of your day. This is your entire day and night. Like, are you thinking about your sleep? Are you thinking about your recovery? Are you thinking about how you get up in the morning? Are you thinking about how you put food into you? Are you well, not even thinking, are you feeling? My goal my entire life, and this is kind of what led me, which will lead me into the breathing, has been, how do I get somebody to feel? How do I get somebody to feel what it is I'm feeling right now? Yeah. Like, and maybe not necessarily the same thing I'm feeling, but to feel what I'm understanding. And from what I could see from a movement standpoint, because my background came from understanding. It first started with running mechanics, but it became mechanics altogether from looking at nature. And I think as a society, we've really buffered off that whole thing of feeling and being awake. And this is everything any spiritual practice has ever taught. Doesn't matter what it is. It's all about being conscious of something and being aware or being awake. And so we get into this place where, we're figuring out all this stuff, and all of a sudden the breathing comes in. And I'm trying to talk to athletes as I've been progressing. I'm trying to communicate in a way that's just not working. Like, hey, you can't do thrusters. You can't do 21-15-9 thrusters right now. You move like donkey. Like, you're just like this. The weight's not working for you, bro. Like, we need to scale that down. Nope. How many people just don't want to listen, because they just want, and it became this whole. We're trying to understand. Well, I've been trying to teach people about training for position my entire career versus training for points. Compete for points, but train for position. And it doesn't, saying that's one thing, right? And trying to get somebody to understand that is a completely different thing, especially in these settings that we've got. Where people are here to train and work out and look better and feel better, and and it's like, so we run into this breathing thing, and the breathing then comes around, and it's like, I'm doing this breathing thing, and I've never been a meditator. I've been somebody who can read, and if I get into something, I go after it. But I'm not a quiet time. I'm a Type A personality. I feel like I'm wasting time if I'm not doing something.
Right.
And here's this breathing thing I run into. I take this course. The first day I'm doing it, I'm like, what just happened? And I entered this place of just complete flow, or like if you're running 100 miles or doing an ultra marathon or even a marathon, you talk about runner's high, and you talk about these places where you're in so much pain, but then the next moment you're completely out of that pain and in a zen-like state, and you're focused, or you're throwing an object, or you're involved in something, or you're getting barreled in a wave or whatever. These places where you're in this flow state, and I was immediately locked into that place. And it was like the mind just shut down, and everything that was primal took over and knew what to do. Yeah. And I was like, here I am. And I knew then that we had something that was going to be even bigger. And it's not that I had it, it's not that Wim had it, and Wim will even tell you the same thing. And it's not that Laird had it, it's that we understood, and we now have something that's going to help people to understand in such a bigger.
And that's the fundamental thing about Wim Hof and the breathing and the fitness and the connectivity to the earth and the spiritual realm of what this practice is. Because, for me, practicing it for 10 weeks is that this awareness is just, it's elevated.
Yes.
right? And now this isn't just for athletes. If you think of yourself as an athlete or high performer, this is for every human being alive.
This is for the most degenerative human being. There exists.
Absolutely.
If you're sitting on a couch and you don't do anything, you're still breathing. And the fact that you can do that, and the fact that we can rev your metabolic rate up, you know, we can get that mitochondria spun up 300%. We can get you aerobic. We can get you functioning in a better way. Like that in itself changes.
And
the game.
that's what, you know, after really diving in, and I really think of this as a deep practice for me to really study and understand the science. And the beautiful thing about what Wim Hof has done is he's been able to get the scientists to prove what he's doing is actually scientific based in the sense of elevating pH levels, alkalinity. In a sense of, for me, it's been a lifelong journey of how to get the most healthy longevity. But I was seeking food or fitness and essentially other stressors that were actually debilitating. And now I'm looking at, Wim as just his breathe, it's like, yes, breathe, apply cold water. Anybody universally can do this.
Yep.
Anybody. And then, I look at some of the comments on Wim's videos and it's just like, man, I breathe. I'm going to get my life together. Someone commented like, literally, man, I've been so unfit, unhealthy. I did a breathing cycle. I'm ready to get. He said, I think it was from England or something. He said these words of like, get it together. And it's like, that's what the breathing does. And I see from the depression and the medication and that this thing can alter the human psyche as a collective whole if we can get people breathing and applying cold water.
It's a bigger application than from a performance standpoint, but performance standpoint for me, just because I've been involved in human performance,
absolutely,
that's the sexy, right?
Right.
But I worked with a guy 3 days ago who I've known for quite some time, who I hired at my first gym, which you came to, and he got into a massive accident, massive TBI, traumatic brain injury, right? Has mental problems, deals with depression, deals with anxiety, deals with a ton of this stuff. 3 days ago we met up and I took him through this stuff. In 3 days, I have gotten text messages like this
Absolutely.
long from this guy on how much better he feels, how much clearer he feels, how much less emotional he has to be towards things, how much he can deal with anxiety, how much, like, like that's the shit that is the
Absolutely.
most important thing to me is like, here's somebody, and I don't need to, like, I'm not like, hey, hands on, here's what you need to do. It's like, here's the breathing, here's some different variants of it. You start applying this, just be consistent with it to start so you can understand it, then start to just do whatever it is you want to do with it.
Right.
And you can do anything with it because it's just breathing. But the fact is the breathing comes back to one thing, is that if I want to take in air and I want to get the most out of the air I want, I'm going to have to be in a good position. And that's fact. Like, you can breathe in a shitty position. Like, I can breathe slouched over. It's just very limiting to where if I sit up, it's... And I've got so much more room to just draw in and get my diaphragm involved and understand that. And, there's just so much research now that's just... I like a good friend of ours, Andy Galpin, he's at the ACSM conference right now. And he is literally texting me. He's like, bro, you have no idea how many studies are going on right now towards breathing. They're
amazing.
All just coming out. And he goes, and it's everything you guys have been playing with over the course of 3 years, and they're all finally starting. And it's not me, it's Wim, it's what some of the stuff we've done.
But if you look at it, Brian, when we go back to the realm of the human conscious mind, and I talked about this about 10 years ago, is where society as a whole is really prepared for this moment. What you're educating, why I'm so interested in it, because I see the future, and what's happening is there's a shift in culture that this is what people need.
Yes.
And it's the basic elements of living in that autonomic nervous system of breathing, body position, and we're now as a society hungry for it.
Oh yeah.
And
well, think about it. It's, if I'm not thinking about my breathing, I'm just, my subconscious rides it, right?
Mm-hmm.
My automatic system, that autonomic thing,
right,
is running it.
right,
But if I'm thinking about it, I'm in control.
right.
And that's the big illusion, that's the big irony about consciousness, is you are actually becoming in
Right.
control of the entire system.
And that right there, what you just said for me is in a journey of pursuing self-governance, will connected to a higher power.
Yep.
Now, once we gain control of our autonomic nervous system and we start to understand our hormones, our happiness, because it's like Tony Robbins affirmation, or and Tony's not just on affirmation, he's about physical state and body position.
Yeah.
Totally been immersed. I've done his whole Mastery University.
Yeah.
And it got me halfway there. It got me there to put the right psychology and physiology. But once I dove into the breathing and fully got what Wim Hof, and Tony again is huge on breathing, and the contrast, and he's doing it.
Tony has been around forever, and there's a reason.
Yes.
He's doing something right.
Right. So it's just like, this is just like, holy smokes, now that I'm gaining control, because I will tell you, when me and my wife were training CrossFit Sport, and we were both in that aggressive, we were like tack dogs. It's like, I'm going to the CrossFit Games, you're going in, and we're like barking at each other, like, don't eat my steak, and we're fighting over things we don't even know, but we're not in control of our system.
Yeah.
And now it's like, I'm breathing, and you should walk, everything's beautiful and amazing. Oh, you want that and this and that, and then you can switch, because I never knew how to do the switch.
Yeah.
You're at calm, you're at resting, and then you're a pit bull.
Yes.
And you're calm and resting, and then you're pit bull. And I never could control it. I was at the mercy of it. And I think it altered everything in my living being, because my work was pit bull, my life was pit bull, my relationship was pit bull.
This is what they want to call ADD.
Right.
And this is what they don't know how to deal with. This is what they want to put your kids on Ritalin for. This is what they want to give them Adderall for. This is what they want to do all this stuff for.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's like with our son. He's 3.5, turns 4 in September. Right now, we're working with him in cold water. We take him down to Barton Springs, where it's 67 degrees.
Yeah.
We teach him when he's in pain to breathe it out. We're just talking about breathing. And like the adaptation of this method with him, he will be lights out, so consciously aware of his physical being, and in so control of his emotions, his mental state, just by breathing and then applying water. It's so powerful for me to know that my son will be equipped with the basic understanding of his physiology and his emotional state, that he will be in that flow state when he needs to call on it.
That is everything you could ever want out of life.
Yeah.
It is to just have that basic understanding of feeling and what that is. Like, I've been able to personally be, like, I've got people that are teaching this in schools and with kids. And they're not doing the 30 breath retention stuff, kids flopping around on the ground. But, it's like, what can change the teacher that we work with, what can change a kid in 10 breaths? And literally, this is one of the things I do, is it's like, what can you change about what you feel in 10 breaths? And if in 10 breaths you can change the absolute way you feel, just think about that for a second.
Absolutely.
Like, you could be in the worst, there isn't anything you can't do. Like, I get into traffic in LA all the time, and I'm sitting in traffic for 2 hours, right? And I'm just like, well, I'm going to breathe.
Right.
And so I breathe, and the next thing I know, I'm like thumbs up to the guy next to me, and people in LA are not friendly.
Right.
It's cutthroat, guns blazing, cut me off. I'm just kidding about the guns.
Yeah.
But, it's not a very nice environment on the freeways.
Yeah.
Right? And it's a mess. But if I breathe, I am totally free.
Yeah.
I am totally free of all the shit that I want to let my logical mind just start to get all fixated on and not be able to control that emotional state of what it is I'm doing. And that is exactly it. It's, hey, that's why we're doing the breathing. That's why we're going to the meditation. That's why we're doing these things, so that we understand that connection to, I've got this adrenaline coming in the body. Now I got dopamine coming in. Now I got this feeling coming up. And it's like, but I can control it.
Right.
But I can control it.
I mean, what you just said is like, to actually now be able to understand the chemical response and the process of that moving through my body. I can now identify a hormone moving through my nervous system, my body, my bloodstream, and be like, oh, that's adrenaline. That's a noradrenaline. That's what's going on with inside of my physical being, and then I can direct it. I can breathe, and I love what with Wim Hof's breathing and focusing in certain areas. You're pushing blood. And those receptor cells are receiving, reducing inflammation, and it's like, this is, it's almost like this isn't even fair. This is it's
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
It's a secret weapon.
Like I always fall back because it's like I always want to talk about the fact it's like sometimes I kick myself for like, it's like even like with CrossFit endurance, when we started that whole thing, which is now power speed endurance, but it was like, God, and I figured this out when I was younger, and it's like, no,
right,
no.
Yeah.
It all happened at a specific place and time for a reason.
Right.
And it's up to you to do something with that reason.
No doubt.
Well,
you're here for a reason. You're down here for your, performance breathing course, and let's transition. It's 8:30, so we got to get ready for you guys to make it over there. But let's talk about what y'all are doing today and just kind of talk about the course and, if you have any insights or just want to share what it is that you're doing and how people can really access, your education.
Yeah, and I'll let Cody kind of chime in here in a second, seeing as he's been quietly watching.
You've done great.
I can see him just chomping at the bit right now.
If you want to pull that mic towards your mouth.
Just like, I've got so much to say at this point. But so today is about, we've been teaching this breathing performance clinic, which inevitably is going to go online. We're still going to go out and teach it, but we're putting it online as well. And we've figured out a few ways of involving breathing and breathing mechanics. Not just the WIM stuff, but WIM is is a big part of this thing, right? And then, we're going to teach you about some apnea training, which is, lung expansion, the ability to, develop more lung, and then talking about some pranayama stuff, yoga, breathing, the training mask, how we came to understand how this thing works, why we would put this mask on our face at all. And what we're seeing with this, the motor control stuff we're seeing with people who, you got people doing kip and pull-ups all over the place, but they have no motor control of that spine. And if I've got a tool that can change that in almost an instant, dude, why wouldn't I use that tool versus just sitting there and, balking about it? So we're gonna kind of lay some principles, the foundation of all this stuff, and then we're gonna have people kind of go and work out towards the end of the day and apply it. And use all of this stuff that we're talking about together and let them decide what it is they want to do with it and how they want to apply it, or if it works or if it doesn't.
Right.
And I'm not here to say one or the other.
Right.
But it's giving people options for the whole thing, and we're not here to teach from a dogmatic place. We're here to kind of present something in a new way and allow people to absorb it in the way that they best can. But it's coming from a level of this deep practice concept and something that would really, really, we've grasped onto this thing called everything is everything.
Right.
And there's really no difference whether I'm talking about human movement or psychology or, relationships or whatever. And this is like something we've discussed, Cody and I have gotten very, very deep on, but this is kind of the place where we're launching into it.
Yeah, I think the big thing from everything is everything. For a while, Brian and we like to ping back and forth when it comes to space. So this is seemingly unrelated, but that's where it kind of comes into being related. We like to talk about black holes and new features and, hey, we just found this, cool new particle and everything else like that. So we had been talking back and forth about Brief History of Time, which is Stephen Hawking's book. And basically in there, the whole process of Stephen Hawking is, for those of you who don't know, he wanted to try and find a way to take all of what we are now and track it back to a single unified theory. That's his whole concept. What is this theory of time, and how does it exist? It's this new dimension that if we can pull it out or change it or move it, we can do a whole new realm of math. We can do a whole new realm of understanding of the world. So we were, having discussions about this, and it's the concept of what if this is true, if there is this unified theory of the central organization of everything that helps with the math that pulls everything else out, does that mean that everything that you do in your day is exactly related to everything else?
Mm-hmm.
So then you start talking about athletes. Let's have an athlete come in and let's have them move. If you're shaving reps on a workout, I'm probably going to find that your personality in life means you're shaving something else in life. Mm-hmm. You may not go all the way at work. You may not go all the way in your relationship. You might be a reserved person. If I find you, going to a workout and just, like you talked about earlier, being a pit bull the entire time, like that's all you've got. That's your attack mentality. Chances are you're going to be an attack mentality outside. You're going to be an attack mentality in your relationship. Just like you explained earlier, you start seeing these overlaps, and so this everything is everything concept gave us the ability to say, truly, what if I can just investigate you as a human being. And that's a different way to coach than the way that we've all tried to do it. We always try and go, all right, I want to see your movement diagnostics. Like when we came in here, I saw our stuff is over in a room where you mask somebody out, you take their body calipers, you throw them up on a table, you try and check their position and things like that. Okay, I've got these resources physically about you. Now I'm going to coach you, right? And then I'm going to bring you out into the gym. I'm going to watch you move a couple times. All right, now I understand who you are as an athlete. Well, what if possibly that's not the solution? What if I need to be examining now? Again, the breathing mechanics. How do you breathe? How do you stand? Let's not talk about moving. Let's not talk about anything. Let's talk about you as a person just sitting there. What do you do? Let's put you in a room and let's get you nervous. How do you respond? How do you respond to being alone? How do you respond to being in a crowd? How do you respond to just having a conversation with somebody? All of those things start to line up now. And in this concept of the whole breathing realm that we've got into, you have to have this investigation. You cannot sit there and breathe without letting your head go to some places that you didn't anticipate it going to start with. You talked about the control concept of breathing. Yes, you get to have control over it, but, and this is me personally, everyone's a little bit different. When I start focusing on the control of breath, then my thoughts go wherever they want to go. It's not one of those things where I control one and the same. Everyone, again, has a little bit of different response to it, but being able to now check and balance all these different things in your life gives you the ability to reformat how you go and perform out there. So now when we take a workout isn't about how do you move as much as it is, let me give you a quick diagnostic. Let me make you metabolically deficient such that you start to break position, and then let me try and recover you quickly with the breath, or let me try and put a mask on you to readjust that position, or let me give you a quick coaching cue. And then when we're done, let's relate this back to your life. Hey, you came in here and you were broken in X, Y, and Z. How's it at home? How's it at work? How's it, did you get too excited on the way here? Was traffic bad? Let's find these focal points, and you can start to now take new levels of an athlete that you never thought was possible, because you're looking at them as a collective whole,
right,
instead of just how physically fit they are.
Right.
So the everything.
Yeah, I was at Lauryn Hill's concert the other day, and she was singing that "Everything Is Everything." I was like, "Oh, this is Brian's song over here." I was like, "This is Lauryn Hill right there." But I think what you guys are doing is the forefront of what essentially is now. So it's just exciting in the sense of what you're talking about, because I think you're talking about this 360 lifestyle approach to I want to say getting everything out of life, but living your full potential.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I get back to, like what I've been seeking for, X amount of years in my life, my whole life journey.
Yes.
Where I found this is like a new beginning of possibility.
Yep.
And that starts with the diaphragm, the breathing, the way that structurally it sets your body, and the way that you're approaching mentally, emotionally, spiritually, whatever context of life you're intersecting. So, super exciting. We've been going,
deep, man.
It really is.
So
we'll probably
deep.
have to do a follow-up podcast here in the next year and see how this explosion, because we're on the cusp, I think, of what y'all are just starting to release with education, what y'all are going to do with the video education, the seminars. So it'll be interesting to track, where this thing goes.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Right on, guys. Well, I know we got to get to our seminars, so thank y'all so much for joining us. And excited.
Thanks for having us, man. Thank you.
Absolutely.
We appreciate you guys. Thanks for listening. Please hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Conversate with us. Let us know what it is that you want to hear, see, or do on the podcast, guys. This is all about value for you, and we want to make it the best possible. So thank y'all so much for listening, and we will see you soon.